Welcome everybody to the Edge Rowing podcast. Super excited today to say our guest is Buffy Williams. Buffy is a former, well, three-time Olympian, Olympic medalist, world medalist, and also now a hydro coach. Buffy, really grateful that you took the time out of your day to come and chat with us, and I'm super excited to hear your story.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Any chance to talk rowing, right?
Absolutely. This is the place for it. The place for it.
Yeah.
But cool. So Buffy, like we were obviously just chatting there about kind of what's going on with life right now. But we'd love to hear kind of how your rowing journey started. Like what did that look like? And then maybe I guess a bit of a kind of context on where you came from before you started rowing.
Yeah. No, so I grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario, in Canada. And I always refer to that city as the King City of Rowing in Canada because it's a real hub. It has much more of a rowing culture like Australia, where there's like this multitude of clubs on one island versus just a singular club with a couple boathouses. It's just got rows of boathouses. So there's lots of high schools that row there. There's clubs that row there. There's universities that row there. So it's much more of a hub or a social kind of scene for individuals. And so I picked up the oar through my high school at Holy Cross when I was in grade 10, much through some coaxing from a coach. So he had seen me play basketball and he was like, "Hey, I really think you should try rowing." And for all of grade 9, every time I walked by his classroom, he'd be like, "Hey, Buff, when are you going to come row for me?" So I started to avoid his area. And but I did. I found myself at the sign up for rowing the next year, and things slowly snowballed from there, very slowly. But that was the first time I got involved in rowing, was through my high school, and they have a wonderful year end regatta called Schoolboys, which brings high schools from all over the country, mostly in Ontario province, but from all over the country will come, um, right from the West Coast, from the East Coast to Ontario for that big event. So it was
Awesome.
pretty eye opening, pretty fun.
Why did, so am I right in thinking you kind of had hesitations about starting rowing or is that wrong at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love to play all school sports, but I, as an organized sport, was a figure skater, and I was zoned in to figure skating. Like I spent a lot of hours in the rink in the arena, um, competing, and my goal was to go to the Olympics in figure skating. That was like my big vision. Having the 1988 Olympic Games in Calgary. And I can vividly
Yeah.
remember a Canadian coming silver, Elizabeth Manley, and the end pose and everything. And I'm like, that is me. I am taking these skates that I have, and that's going to be me. So that
Awesome.
was my kind of my vision. So I knew how much the rowers trained at early mornings after school, and I spent that time in the rink. So I just didn't know if it would fit for me and my schedule.
What do you think what benefits that you got from like figure skating helped you with rowing, do you think?
I think it's one of those things, like, such transfer of any sport skill if you have the right mentality. Like for me, the challenge of trying to achieve a certain skill, the hard work, determination. Um, we would constantly, obviously, the routines of, the skating routines, that cardio fitness,
Yeah.
that's totally transferable, and the intensity, right? The power of like jumping. So a lot of physiological benefits of
Yeah.
skating, but I think really it comes to just like that mentality as well, right? Like you're really focused on something. I mean, I loved it too, so it was really easy for me to lace up some skates and skate for hours. But yeah, like I probably by high school I was probably spending about 18-20 hours on the ice,
Wow.
right? So that's a lot of training. And then you have, obviously, some strength training or plyometric training, and other stuff too that feeds into that. That's transferable to rowing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like power skating is one. I've heard that there's so much transferability between that and rowing, and it would make sense, I guess, that hockey and figure skating as well. It's kind of like that power and strength, but it's not. It's kind of that endurance element. But for you, what were like the mental challenges that you had in figure skating? Like what was mentally hard about it, and what did you develop there that you think transferred over into rowing?
Um, well, I think one of the biggest things with figure skating is you need such a body awareness, right? You need to know where your body is in space. Um, when you're spinning, when you're up in the air, um, you need to know where you are because it could result badly if you're start to get undirected, right? So I think in transferring to rowing, one of my biggest assets was feeling, right? I think a lot of rowers um, don't necessarily have the feeling of the water, like the blade catching the water, that connection, that suspension, all of those transferable feelings, like what am I feeling in this boat, was very much something that I used and similar, like I transferred that, right?
Hmm.
But in terms of a challenge, like in skating, there was certain elements that were harder than others, and it was, as you're taking that leap to challenge yourself to the next element or the next skill, um, it there's always that nervousness, right? Like there's that you want to get it, but there's always that you could fall, you could fail, you could
Hmm. Hmm.
not be successful. I mean, with that though comes this like incredible sense of like success when you do get it, right? But you have
Yeah.
to really work hard forever. Like it never came easy for me, right? To get these jumps, to get these spins, and then to put it all together in a program. I don't think I was a natural figure skater. Let's just say that, right? Like I loved it, but I don't nothing came easy for me. I had to work really, really hard to get these skills. And there was moments where I fell, and I fell hard and it hurt.
I bet.
And so you have to learn, yeah, you have to learn to like basically not make yourself afraid when you go to try it again, right?
How do you do that?
Well, it takes, sometimes it can take super super time. I didn't have a mental trainer at that time. It wasn't something that was commonplace, like I think a lot of the figure skaters have now, right? To like work them through some of these challenges that are
Mhm.
related to the sport, right? Or any sport, right? It's so advantageous to have a mental performance coach to help them work through some of these challenges, to provide different insights or how to overcome the fear. It doesn't matter what sport you are in, there's a fear component to it, right?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
and if you say there isn't, I don't think you're ever going to be a successful athlete if you don't have some element of like fear, right? Like that's essentially, but you have to overcome the fear or figure out how to like have checkpoints and how you're tackling that fear, right? And I think essentially for me, it becomes that mental game of, okay, I'm really scared because I bailed, I hit my head on that one, right?
And you don't
So, but
wear
I need
helmets
to
in figure
achieve.
skating, right?
No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, that would look pretty silly. Well, no, it shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't anyways.
No,
Sorry,
no,
interrupt.
I know. It would take away from the grace for
Yeah.
sure if you had helmets. Yeah, I think then it's just about coming up with, um, working with your coach, um, just yourself, self-talk, right? Like trying to overcome just, yeah, I mean, again, it's just self-talk, positive self-talk,
Yeah.
breaking the skill down and then
What sort of,
slowly
sorry, I just
working through that.
on positive self-talk, what sort of things would you say for to yourself? Like if you can remember, like what would you use as positive?
Yeah, well, yeah, instead of like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna hurt myself. It would be more like, okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm going to I'm going to think about a technical point. I'm going to squeeze extra hard here. I'm going to visualize the landing of this, like not visualize the fall of this jump, right?
Hmm.
Um, just little things like that. It's small word changing of the wording, right? Versus it's very simple, very very simple. And I again something I used in my rowing career, like all of this messaging, this self-talk, right? Versus I'm not going to win a race. I'm I'm not fast enough off of the start. I'm too small compared to this person. It was, well, I'm really technically good. I'm just taking a negative thought and trying to train myself to play into my strengths and also be able to um, overcome fear, essentially,
Hmm.
the
Okay.
fear of failure.
Yeah, fear of, yeah, huge. Um, is it true that like the best figure skaters are the ones that fall all the time?
You honestly, absolutely, you have to fall in skating because otherwise you're not going to get to the top. You're not going to get to the best you. You're not going to achieve the. There's always one more jump that you could achieve. If you're doing all your triples, go for quadruples, and you're going to fall,
Hmm.
right? Or you're gonna be scared and you're gonna just open up and stop the process, right? So it's totally that is a skill in itself, falling for skating. Like it is a skill, and I'll never forget going away for because I figure skated right up until I left for university, in which I fully then switched to rowing. And I went back for Christmas holidays, having not rowed from like March till December. Went out, I was doing all these jumps, but I kept falling, right? Because I just didn't have my feet, like I just didn't have quite that sense that I was used to, was falling and falling, falling. But then I eventually landed. It was fine. I felt good. But the next day I had a bruise from like my hip all the way down to my knee from falling because it kind of hurt to fall. I wasn't relaxing, right? I was like,
Right.
I'm going to fall. So my muscles were tensing up and I hit
Mm.
that ice and it was just like, boom, right? Versus when you're always falling, it's
Ah.
very rare that you have like a really, really, really bad fall because you relax. You're like, oh, because you already know in the air,
Mm.
oh, this is not going to go my way. And you relax into the fall. But I didn't do that after about 8 months off. And
That's
so
really
that's when
interesting.
I officially said, I am not going to do any more jumps. If I ever come back on the ice again, jumps are not going to be part of my experience because that hurt. Having that bruise for the rest of the week, I was like, no, no, I'm rowing now. I'm not skating.
That's so interesting, you talking through the process of being good at falling and how that is just like the better you get, the more used you are to failure, so the better you can handle it. That's I've never really heard it explained that way, so that's so interesting. Do you think that there's any like with rowing, could you maybe explain that in the same way where I don't know, like elite rowers would be better at dealing with failure because they've done it more? I don't know if you could think. It really got me thinking there, but I don't know if you could think of any kind of similarities to rowing in that way.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think if you were to go into a rowing environment, um, let's think of your young self, right? You're going into the national team environment for the first time. And you've probably spent your high school or uni days, and probably if you're entering the national team environment, probably been up there, right? Like you're usually winning pieces. Um, but now you're going into an environment that's stronger and better, which is exciting, but you're probably not going to be there for day in day out pieces, right? You're going to strive to be at the top, but you're probably not going to be. And and I am using the national team as an experience, but it can be any jump in a different environment, right? Where it's a change, it's quite possible you're not going to have that success or what you
Hmm.
identify as success, right? Which is winning every piece,
Hmm.
winning it by 5 lengths. Like you're probably going to be digging deep to just stay in contact with that group, right? Like, and that can day in, day out after like weeks of something like that, that can look in your mind like a failure, right? That can, you're falling. Um, and it all depends on how you start to look at it, though. You could say, well, I'm falling, or I'm actually making a greater progress by being the weak link in this strong
Hmm.
program,
100%.
right? And now, yeah. And so you just keep digging to get to the other side of that group. Right, you keep grinding to, but someone could put themselves into the dark depths of like, I suck, I'm failing, I'm supposed to be, I should be really good, I was so good in this environment, right? I don't know, that's just one example. When you said that,
Yeah.
it kind of comes into my head because, and for a lot of people, they may never get to the top of that group, right?
Hmm.
It's possible. And you have to say to yourself, well, is that a failure, or is it actually, is it not? Because I'm sticking in, I'm hanging in there among some amazing athletes.
Yeah, I remember Kath Bishop was on the podcast, and she's huge into this, The Long Win, which is an amazing book, which is kind of all about this stuff. But she was talking about how she was in the national team one time, and I think they were getting grilled by the head coach because they didn't do well in pieces or something like that, and they were all made to feel like failures. And she's like, "This is a group of like 30 people that are the best in the country at what they do, and yet they're being made to feel like failures." But and anyways, the kind of other thing it was reminding me of a quote where it's like, if you are the best person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. You know what I mean?
I
So
like that. I
yeah.
mean, I think you always surround yourself by people. You aim to surround yourself by people who are always better than you, because that's going to bring out better in you, right? Or if you do seemingly end up on top, you want to be creating that environment where you feel like someone is constantly pushing you, right? If
Hmm.
you, I don't know, I really, I think it's really valuable, especially as you are in the early stages of some change in your athletic career. I think that is the ideal way to enter a program. um I will, I found it really interesting. I had a teammate at the uni level. She was considered probably the best junior athlete for Canada at that time. And I'm walking into this program as well as a couple other really phenomenal athletes in Canada. And I was excited about rowing with these individuals, right? Like I had come from a program where I rose really quickly and was seemingly at the top. So now to enter into a system where I'm not going to be, I mean that was the whole reason for my move. I was like, this is the best place to be to set me up for trying out for the senior national team. And I found it really fascinating when a year later, so we enter university, and I'm just clawing, wanting to be the best in that program, but entering a really strong program. We land at the national team scene, and of course, she has all this pressure of being the best junior athlete that's making the leap, whereas I'm just, Buffy Williams, who got fourth in a four at Junior Worlds, right? And I'm small, and I don't have the best erg score, where she's got the best erg score. All these comparisons that are so
Yeah.
contrast, right? Who ends up in the eight that wins a silver medal? Me.
Hmm.
Who goes to the under 23s? Her. So I almost feel like I was in a better position to be successful, though, to be honest.
Yeah.
I had no pressure on me, and she had it all. And she saw it that way too. It wasn't even like, she saw it, she felt it, whereas I was just doing my thing in the corner. That's the way I looked at it, right? I'm just doing my thing. I'm not making any waves with my erg score, that's for sure. I'm
Yeah.
not making, I definitely, every time I got into a boat, I was going to make it as fast as I could, but I wasn't necessarily winning pieces either. I was just just in the, I like to look at it as just in the
Nice.
corner.
And the shadows
But
lurking.
unfortunately, yeah, the shadows lurking and unfortunately in the corner, but the coach couldn't ignore me either. Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this girl keeps, seat racing and I can't seat race her out.
Yeah, that's a
she
good way.
keeps, she, yeah,
It's
yeah.
a good way, I
But
guess,
I
because a
find
lot of,
it really,
yeah, sorry, on you go. Sorry, on you go.
no, no, it's hard. I know. Yeah, no, I just found it really, really interesting. And of course, this is, something that I watched for the next 2 or 3 years as well with this particular individual. And I felt so bad for her almost. Like, like you have everything, and yet it's just not quite playing out for you.
Yeah, I guess it's maybe a way that you could look at somebody who's being overlooked by a coach or being told that they're not tall enough or they're not going to make it in the top eight that it can be hard not to, but you could easily start to just let those beliefs fester. Or maybe a good way of looking at it is, as you said, reframe it and say, well, you know what, great, there's now no pressure on me. I'm the person who's been told I'm not going to be in the eight, I'm too short, I don't have the right erg score, so there's no worries. I can just go out, train as hard as I can, and enjoy it. So it's a good way of framing it. What was the what was the kind of catalyst that pushed you to get into rowing and kind of leave figure skating?
Um, I in the summer of grade 11, I went away to train at a national training center for figure skating, and the writing on the wall became like there for me in terms of I was not going to reach my goals in this sport. Like I was nowhere close to it. And I think training in that environment and not being able to, I had set 2 goals for myself to achieve by the end of the summer, and I only achieved once. And I think that was a total mind flip for me, where I said figure skating came very hard for me in terms of like achieving what I did achieve in it. Rowing was kind of the opposite. It came very easy to me. And I say that lightly because rowing is not easy. We know that. Like it takes a certain all those transferable skills we talked about in the beginning, like having some body awareness, having power, having all that is obviously very important. But in terms of like just hopping in a boat and making it move, it did become very easy. And I slowly things like figure skating that I loved, like hearing the the blade get like etch into the ice and the feeling of like pushing your blade into the ice, all of that I started to really feel that with rowing, like that the bubbles under the hull, like all those sensory things that we all love to hear,
Hmm.
when you're going fast, when you can hear the bubbles and you hear the swoosh. And um I think it just started to like the writing on the wall with figure skating. I'm not going to achieve the goal that I have set out for myself since I was a little girl of going to the Olympics. And then rowing, I'm like, I have had some pretty quick success in this, like within a year and a half of picking up an oar, like, and only rowing school seasons. I never rowed through the summer. So I really only rowed 3 months of the year. And then, I'm going to junior worlds, and that experience going to junior worlds was the absolute turning point. So I'd already said, okay, figure skating's not going to happen for me in grade 11. Grade 12, go to junior world. Again, only off of a season of rowing for school for a few months and representing Canada. I was like, that was like putting the maple leaf on the blade was the most powerful moment for me because you train with the red and white on the blade. But when you put the decal on the blade, that was like the most powerful moment for me. And then being in that starting gates, which I'm sure you can relate to, Romania, Great Britain, Canada, USA, just hearing that roll call, I'm I'm not just representing Buffy. I'm not representing St. Catharines. I'm not representing Holy Cross. I'm representing Canada. Like that's my dream, right? And so I came back from Poznan, Poland, where the junior worlds were that year, having come fourth, and like this is what I want to do. And every decision from there really looked at how can I make the senior team so that I can go to the Olympics and win a medal, essentially.
Awesome. So what actions did you start to take after you ask yourself the question, what decisions do I need to make to get to the national team? What did that kind of that next level look like for you?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting because a lot of Canadians head to the States on scholarships,
Right.
right? And that's definitely a pathway. That's definitely a possibility. And I had had scholarships offered from Princeton and Yale and some other schools. But I was like, having spent so little time, like if I would have like actually counted out the amount of time that I had spent on the water to date, because I'd only rowed in the spring, except for that first junior year, I rowed my first 2 months in the summer. So if I were to put on water time, I had maybe rowed for a year and a half on the water, right? So
Mhm.
I really felt it was important for me if I was going to make big strides, I needed to be on the water. Well, where can you do that in Canada? I mean, everybody thinks of Canada as being this like snowy, wintry, you can't get water, but you can if you go to the West Coast, Vancouver, Victoria specifically, right? So I started to really look at I wanted to stay in the Canadian system. The national team trained in Victoria, and there happened to be a university there that had a pretty strong rowing program. So that's what I started to look at, and that's where I landed. So it was really, I just, for me, it wasn't, it was about how quickly I can get to that goal of being on the senior
Mhm.
team and what do those steps look like. And for me, it was about staying in the Canadian system, um, and and then rowing as much as possible. I wasn't a fan of that erg machine, and I also thought it would be beneficial for me having rowed so little on the water to to spend as much time on the water.
Okay, so there's the decision to go to Victoria. What behaviors did you have that you think were helping you progress at quite a quick rate?
Um, so there, like, the coach there was very in tune to the national team. So worked closely with the national team coach and knew um, just what they were looking for, as well as, they incorporated all the national team testing into the university testing.
Mm.
So if there
Okay.
was like, you had to submit at that point, it was a 20-minute test. It wasn't even a 6K. It was like a little bit different 20-minute test or 2K, whatever the test was, they would put that into um, their season, so to speak. So that made it really easy to submit those scores, right? Um, and interestingly, my first year university was a post Olympic year, so it was 97. And so they were now handing out development cards. And one of the camps for that development to identify athletes was being hosted in Victoria that fall. So that was really, really awesome and beneficial. Yeah,
Okay.
that was
Okay.
that was a unique one because I surprised the head coach Al Moro at the time, because I won all the seat racing, and I was
Wow.
kind of, as I already indicated, my erg score wasn't uh, great. I think I was 712, so it
Okay.
wasn't great, right? Like that was my junior score, 712, I believe. And then, but I had won all the seat racing, so it's kind of like, well, who is this person? This is annoying. And I can remember him on our post camp meeting being like, well, you've done very well here this weekend, but I don't know if you're a fluke. Like I don't know if I can give you a card. I'm like, okay.
How did you
And
take that?
and I was just like, well, I'd already had my university coach recommend that I don't go to the camp because I wasn't ready. And I respectfully like said, I understand, and that's your job to give me honest feedback, but I'm here for this reason, and I just want to see where I sit. Like I need to know
Mm.
where I'm at. Like how behind am I? Like
So no
where
fear of
am I?
failure then.
Yeah, I just wanted to see where I fit. Like, okay, this is how much work I have to do. This is um and again, I just put my head down and pulled, and that's, I got a really good result, but it was kind of shocking, I think, to the coaches at that point and where I was, and maybe they saw me as having potential. Um, but I think they were like, well, I don't know, this could be just a one-off. So that's like lightness. If you say that to me, I don't know, that my personality is like kind of right, like
For those
I'm
listening on
like
audio, she just extended her middle finger and pointed it to the camera.
little bird, but in
Yeah.
a nice way. I'm very respectful.
Yes,
I'm not bitter
I
or
know what you
anything. I'm
mean.
like, you
Yeah.
know what? Like, okay, well, I'm gonna show you then. It's not like, whoa, me. It's just like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
love it when someone tells me that I can't do something. It's so fun. It
Isn't
makes like a
it
game.
great? It's total game. You just played into my cards. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what you're saying to the person. Thank you. I like that card.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fuel. I remember like I was told, yeah, like in sports and in school and stuff like that, any type of teacher or someone would doubt me, it'd be fuel. So okay. So going back, you just got you you took that leap of faith. Again, I think that's something people should take away is a lot of the time people are afraid to enter races, right? Because they're not ready, they're not good enough. But the way you were looking at it was you want to know where you stand because, like you've been saying before, it's just a good measuring stick, and it's only going to be something that gives you a guide and something to train towards. Um, and then a bit of doubt still from the coaches. So you went back, well, like you said, with that card. Um, what did you start to do then? Like I want to understand what you were doing kind of like day to day that was separating you from other people and giving you this rate of progression.
Well, I think I was all of a sudden, I did end up getting carded 3 months later. So I got a
Okay, super
development
quick.
card. So a minimal amount of money, but more importantly, my school was paid for, which is amazing. But it also gave me access. All of a sudden, now I'm getting sent the training program, which is recommended from the national team. I'm seeing the national team that has decided to base themselves in Victoria, going out every day. Um, and sometimes getting the odd row in with them because if it fit into my school schedule or a Saturday row, I had reservations a little bit about getting too involved. I liked knowing what was happening and what the schedule was and what workouts they were doing. But I also, I, I just was easing my way into that environment because I didn't know anybody either. Right. So, um, I just was really strategic. I looked at what they were doing. I looked at what our team was doing, the university, and my school schedule. And I would just put in extra runs, rows, or ergs when to try to meet what the national team was doing in terms of hours, as long as it fit with my school schedule. I was, obviously a full-time student as well. But so I just kind of tried to merge programs, but on my own. I don't necessarily recommend this to everybody. But I was like the master of my own schedule, so to speak, right? So I would say, for instance, if I wanted to do three extra routines at my or workouts, three extra workouts because I thought, well, that's a good mix of the national team program and what my coach is doing. I would just head to the gym and go do those three extra workouts. I wasn't necessarily saying anything. But when I look back, it was I think mentally, obviously physically pretty good for me. I had already, while I was doing now all rowing related training or like cross training type training, I obviously had spent a lot of hours in the rink. So my body was able to cope with that load, right?
Mhm. Right, yeah.
Like it wasn't like I was increasing the load that I was doing. I was just doing the load in a different way and maybe a little bit more. And while we didn't use that language back then, I think a lot of the extra workouts I was doing were probably like a zone two, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So low intensity, go for a run for 60 minutes, on a bike for 60 minutes, go erg for 60. Like, you know what I mean? It was low intensity.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
those were like little add-on workouts that I did.
All right. All right. And then okay, so doing the extra volume then was a big one. Um technically, your feel was there any big kind of technical breakthroughs for you that helped, or was it like more like what you said before where it's just that feel came naturally because you developed it through figure skating?
Definitely the feel. So if I had coaches instructing me to do something, I typically was very quick to make that change. It wasn't necessarily always the change they were looking for, but I made the change in my interpretation of it. And
Hmm.
um, but I think the power of that one is just getting the time on the water, the exposure of that, feeling the stroke from that perspective more frequently, like every day, and consistency, right? Like this is the power of
Yeah.
consistency, right? You don't necessarily see like this big moment of wow, what a technical change. Wow. It was the day in, day out, just doing it. It's not glamorous, right? It's just the day in, day out, just doing it. Trying to like listen, be very coachable, make changes when the coach says something, which again is a skill, right? Like, you've coached the person where you're telling them the same thing over and over, and it's like they're not doing anything about it because either they think they've got the right stroke, they don't have the ability to change it, they don't
Hmm.
they don't hear you, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
They don't
There's
understand the
that
accent.
they don't
Yeah. Mine's weird,
right?
but
Like
yeah.
whatever it is. It's just I'm not saying they're not coachable, but it's difficult to coach them for whatever is happening in their brain. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I had a little bit, I was very lucky. And again, I think that came from the skating because it's such a feeling sport that it was nice to be able to transfer that into the feeling of the water, you moving past the water, you pushing the water away, right?
Yeah, that coachability thing is definitely something that some people seem to have and other people struggle with. And I've thought a lot about like what is it that makes someone coachable or not. And just from my experience of getting reps of seeing it with some people, it does seem to come down to a fear thing and a fear of like, well, I might make that change, but then it's going to be more unstable. Or if I make this change, then I'm going to have less grip here or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all experienced that. Um, and I would say the better you become at your sport or at rowing, the harder it is to make that change. A, because you've like already like grooved in that particular movement. But then also, like you say, the fear of making a change because you are going to take steps back. It's true.
Mm.
Sorry. It's
Yeah.
very rare that you're automatically going to get faster, but it's the long game, as you pointed out, quoted Cat that Bishop. It's like, okay, it's not going to feel right now. This doesn't feel right. This feels unstable. I don't think this is going to make me faster.
Hmm.
Well, you have to like kind of push those aside and trust at some point that if you just keep trying to like groove in that particular movement, that it will make you faster, right? Like yeah, I don't know. I find it really interesting. I picked up a really bad habit. I think it was because I was shorter rowing with um taller people when I first started, but I lunged at the catch.
Oh yeah.
Like I was like, and I will never ever forget watching myself row for the first time because video wasn't as accessible back
Oh
then,
yeah.
right? We're talking late 90s. No one was carrying the iPad and passing it to you and
Yeah.
showing you right away. It was like a big production if you were going to do video. So my parents had my first regatta after about 8 weeks of rowing, showed me. I was so excited. We'd won the race. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see myself row, put it on the TV. And I was like, oh, that's what I look like. Oh my God, no, what am I doing? Like, why am I did not feel that. That's not what I thought I looked like, right? So I was
Yeah.
the feeling to be seeing was not. And I can
Mm.
remember saying to my coach, why have you not told me that I'm doing that? And he goes, oh, you've been thinking of a lot of things. I didn't want to overwhelm you. Well, that battle with that technical skill carried me right through. Like I was always like I would say until like the end of my second quadrennial was I finally figured out how to control my lunging. Like it's just funny, right? So you have to take, even though I'd thought about it and I'd made changes and visibly I no longer looked like that. It was a constant thought process, right? And you think of how many strokes I took from that first regatta of mine all the way to like say second quadrennial, like we're talking like years of rowing, right? 10 years of rowing and I'm still having to think about that etched in bad habits, right? Like it took mental power to, in
Hmm.
stressful situations to make sure that I
Yeah.
wasn't going back to that bad habit.
That's the key in stressful situations, isn't it? How did you go
Yeah.
about fixing the lunge? And more, what I'm more interested in is how do you go about making sure you don't go back to bad habits in stressful situations?
Um, those are great questions. But I think again, it is just sometimes, obviously sometimes it's pointed out to you in by a coach, an outside eye, right? A coxswain, a coach, a teammate, be like, oh, Buffy, like you need to sit up, right? Like sit up. And so I think a lot of it did come with like getting a lot of strength in my core,
Okay.
right? I didn't have tons of, it's so surprising to me coming from figure skating to this day. When I first had my assessment, the first year on the national team, the PT saying, God, you have no core. You have no core. You're weak. You need to work on this. I was like, what do you mean?
I thought there would be
Like, what do
core with
you mean?
figure skating.
I know, but for whatever reason, I don't know. I don't know if I just relied way more on my glute. I know the glutes are part of your core. I guess I'm looking at more like your transverse
Drunk,
the
yeah.
inner core. You're more your trunk, right? Whereas I think figure skater, I probably relied more on my glutes as my core, right?
Hmm.
And um, so I had to really work on that whole corset, so to speak, and that really helped me. Um, with my lunging, right? Like strengthening that core. And let's be honest, that's such a pivotal part of the stroke, anyways, right? The transfer of your hands to your feet is all through your
Yeah.
core. Like that's the powerful part of your stroke if you have it and you use it and you learn it.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. And then you were talking about being aware to enough to not go back to old habits when you're stressed. So how did you develop that focus and those kind of like racing moments, first 250, last 250 or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was like key phrases, right? When you nail down those race strategies or your race plan, usually some form of like a sit up, squeeze here, or, those were like really important to inject for me. Right, especially at the beginning or the end, as you've just mentioned. That's like especially at the end,
Yeah.
right? Like the tendency would definitely be for me to just keep the length rather than like sitting up a little bit more, just yeah, and being strong, right? So yeah, it was definitely about injecting keywords that just reminded me of like, right, those positions,
Okay.
which
Okay.
is the power of plans, right? Race plans, and you
Yeah.
practice them. They don't just come out in race plans too. You're constantly practicing, obviously not the whole race plan, but words of your race plan. You're constantly doing in workouts, so
Hmm.
you start to evolve what really triggers good rowing by a simple word.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So managing your training load, doing some of it on your own, getting more involved with the national team, improving technical areas. I guess that area specifically was a harder one to change. But um, what did when you got into the national team and then started to maybe like train towards your kind of Olympics, like what was that process like of coming in as a new person and then fighting for a seat at the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, each of my quadrennials are so unique. Um, right? We evolve as people, we evolve as athletes, but definitely walking in um, on site as a young, fresh 20-year-old, kind of new to the scene. No one knows my name. I don't know anyone else's name because I wasn't really watching rowing growing up, so to speak. I was watching figure skating, right? So I don't know rowers' names. Obviously we have the household names, Marnie McBean and Kathleen Heddle. Those are hard to avoid and not have cross your window, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, I definitely showed up wide-eyed, ready to soak it all in, all the realities of nerves. Um, and I was entering really a veteran scene. They're all like most of the people from 96 were back
Oh, right. Okay.
and training. And there was even a couple that went to the 92 games, and they are all very well decorated. And I just feel really thankful that I almost didn't know that because it was already intimidating enough entering into the environment. Um, but yeah, it was a huge, I'm going to admit that after my first year of rowing and making that team, because I did make the senior world team, and I was actually put into stroke seat as well. So I had a three-time Olympic medalist behind me, a three-time Olympic medalist in front of me. And it was intimidating. There was like
I can
I
imagine.
got feedback from in front of me, I got feedback from behind me, and I got feedback from out in the coach boat. And all of my other uni mates that had come to try out for the team were on the under 23 team. I was on the senior team, so our training schedules were different. What we were doing was different. And it was hard. It was hard. Like I spent a summer of I'm not good enough. I am
Oh,
not good
really?
enough.
Yeah.
Just pure, and I know like you don't put someone who's not good enough in stroke seat in hindsight, but in that
Mhm.
moment I was like I just constantly felt like I was getting so much feedback. And I feel so fortunate that my dad, he was a professional hockey player. So he played in the NHL, not necessarily
Cool.
common language in GB, but
Yeah. National
he was a
Hockey
prof.
League for those who don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I was able to call and like basically say, I don't understand, like this is happening. I'm not good. And they're doing that. I kind of just cry, cry it out, right? Or whine or whatever we want to say. And he'd be like, well, Buffy, have you thought about it this way? Like maybe they think you're actually good and they put you in this spot because of this, or have you heard it this way? Like, because he also coached in the NHL as well for a couple years.
Cool.
So he had both the athlete and the coach's experience of being like, okay, you're sounding like they're really, and sometimes it felt pretty harsh, to be honest. Like it was kind of old school coaching of like, it was pretty harsh sometimes. So,
From your
but
dad
I
or
just
from the coach in there?
from the coaches and the athletes, right?
Okay. Wow.
Like, and so my dad just softened it a little bit. And it's just like, well, have you thought of this? And he's not a soft guy. So don't, but like, he just like, have you thought about it this way? And I'm like, oh, okay. So he just kind of buffered it, right? He just created a buffer. But I did go into that first world championships and I kind of debated whether this would be my last summer. I was like, I don't know
Oh,
if the
really?
Olympic dreams for me. This was a really hard summer. It wasn't fun. Like it just didn't feel fun,
Mhm.
right? Like, and I didn't know like how much had I improved, like how much for what I like. I want life to be fun. Like I know there's a
100%.
grind to it, but ultimately at the undercurrent of everything, I want to have fun. I want to have fun pursuing this dream. Like if it's not fun, I'm not in for this journey. I'm going another way. Right? So I
Yeah.
kind of had reached
100%.
there. Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting because I mean these are the sliding door moments, right? Where I can remember going out to that my first World Championship finals. And the head coach said to me, he went down the line. He individually said something to everyone, and he said to me, he's like, Buffy, we put you in this seat for a reason. You're gonna nail this. You're gonna do this. Good luck, right? And I just was like, oh, okay. Like I hadn't heard that all summer. And what
Really?
I had heard in my head, whether I don't think the coach was necessarily saying that, but in my head, it was like, I'm not good enough. Why the hell am I here? Like, but in that moment, I believed in what he said that I'm there for a reason. I'm in that seat for a reason. And then we won a silver medal. And let's be honest, being on the podium, like success is like, I don't know if we would have come last. I don't know. But we came second. And it was like, oh, maybe this isn't so bad. Right? Like I had that moment with the coach and a medal. And I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad. And also, I don't know in your experience, but quite often when a crew medals, it creates a natural bonding that happens between it
Hmm.
versus if it's a lot harder to have that bonding when there's not success, right? People tend to like go their own way and then come back versus a success. You celebrate it, you bond, and that's what happened. So I felt a little bit more in with the veterans, just a little, not a lot, but a little, just enough to put my foot through the door. And that kind of, working with these girls over the next 3 years and training and um, vying for a spot in the boat every year just was the push, right? It was definitely a switch in my head going into that world championships and leaving that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just thinking of somebody who maybe doesn't have, well, maybe they have people they can call, but not somebody they can call for advice like that. What advice would you have given to yourself? Like if you could send a message back right now, like what would you say to yourself in that first kind of summer training with all the criticism?
Yeah, I think for me, even in hindsight, like I already started to look at it by like the end of that year. I was saying to myself, okay, wait a second. I was getting all that feedback. I was getting so overwhelmed with all this feedback because they believed I could take it. They
Mm,
believed I could take all that feedback and be better. They want me to fast track and they want me to be better, faster. And I think again, like I feel very fortunate to have had my dad as a buffer to just have me kind of put little thoughts to be able to say, have you looked at it this way? And it festered. And then I honestly believe that throughout that quadrennial, I quickly realized exactly that if I were to say to my younger self, they see you as potentially being really good. They're giving you more feedback. They're giving you more information. They are fast tracking you to be part of these very successful veterans group. So yeah, like I think again, you can someone else's mind could have put them into a rabbit hole of dismal, like never getting out of the hole. Like I really truly believe sometimes it's the way we look at something. And some of the things that I experienced that summer, I feel like could have put me right. If I looked at it a certain way, could have put me in a hole that I never came out of. But because I was able to almost instantly become the 40-year-old and tell myself, this is why. I feel lucky that I didn't have to wait 20 years to tell me that's why they were doing it. I had a very quick time frame on that.
amazing.
Retrospective, tell your 20-year-old self.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's great advice that people listening can take home if they find themselves in the same situation. So, okay. Talk to me about what your kind of first Olympics was like, and then how that evolved through your kind of career with those, yeah, th three different Olympics. You mentioned they're all very different. I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as I've already said that I was much more I was the youth of the crew really leading into the 2000 games. And yeah, I definitely added that youthful spirit. Like everyone laughed at me in a good way, not laughed at me, laughed with me, but I usually was the source of entertainment just
Okay.
because again, they had that experience of going to the Olympic Games. They knew the intensity. I was just kind of like, "Oh, Olympics." Like, I didn't really comprehend the intensity of the Olympic Games until I got there. And I was like, oh, okay, now I understand what everyone's talking about, right? So there was definitely, we had medaled every year leading into the games. And there was definitely expectations that we had put on ourselves, that the news had definitely broadcasted that we should be on the podium. But it had also done that for some other crews in 2000 for the Canadians. And as the regatta proceeded, the games proceeded, it quickly showed that the Canadians, there was one last attempt for them to get on the podium, and that was us. So the pressure
That's a
gradually
lot of
kind of
pressure.
built. Yeah, yeah. And again, you know what? It's all what you put on yourself. It's all what you put on yourselves as teammates, as a team. But there was definitely lots of emotion around the Canadian team, right? As we're watching people have successes and not quite reaching what they expected. And yeah, it was definitely lots of emotions around the Canadian team. And for me personally, I I was a bottle of nerves. like, I was just like, again, because I felt like we were representing Canada and wanted to do Canada proud. And, um, but again, our coach nailed it and had this great way of preparing us and setting us up for a really good race. But yeah, all the newness of the games and all the feelings of the games, like walking into the opening ceremonies, like all of that, the newness, the all of your what you imagined it to be coming to fruition was, yeah, quite an experience. And then walking away with a medal um, was pretty exceptional. Yeah, it was pretty amazing experience. And as a, you know, a culmination of 4 years of like growth with this group, essentially, because there was very few changes within that crew in that 4 years. Yeah, it was pretty amazing just to see how I had grown alongside those girls, like friends for life, right? The power of rowing, friends for life.
Mhm.
We still chat, we still get together, and um but yeah, I'm the youngin. Like I'm still the young. Everyone forgets. Everyone always thinks that I went to 96 Olympics as well because I did just fit in with the group after that first year. But like, yeah, definitely a very different experience than going into my next games, right? Like my eyes had been opened and I knew what it was about. I totally knew there wasn't as much wonder, and I knew what I wanted in the next games for sure. For sure.
Amazing. Okay. Okay. So, um, yeah, for so conscious of the time here, I don't want to
Yeah.
take too much of your time. Maybe like one last question for you would be, you mentioned that growth and that change that you had over the Olympics, that kind of first cycle. It can be super hard, so feel like you don't have to do it for all of them. But if you could maybe kind of bird's eye view of like how you changed as a person going through those experiences, even if it is just that first Olympics or if it's maybe all three, what would that change in growth be?
I think again, as we journey through this life, right? Whatever we're pursuing, whatever we put forth as a goal, and that could be like many goals. It doesn't have to be just necessarily one. You are constantly taking opportunities to learn. And there's so many people that are surrounding you and giving you the opportunity to learn, right? Essentially. And some of it we're gonna say, okay, I don't need to learn that. Let's just shelf that. Other people, like you're just like you're soaking in everything and it's you just want to use everything they say. Um, I think for me as an athlete, I just, going through the three different quadrennials to this first quadrennial being just so many unknowns and being overwhelmed and then recognizing the opportunity in that as well, like just okay, I'm overwhelmed, everything's new, but there's opportunity. And in the next quadrennial being like, okay, this is what I want, but being plagued by injuries and having to cope with the injuries and why am I getting injured, and essentially in the end knowing what I want, but then at the same time 5 weeks out from the games not even knowing if I was going to be at the games because of an injury, right? So but I was so overcoming that, which totally you learn so much about yourself, right? Through that process of dealing with an
Hmm.
injury and maybe not having everything that you've planned play out the way you had imagined, to the final where it's like I mean I became a mom and then went back to the games, and that's not something that happened back then in '08. That was like
Oh, really?
very, yeah, I was the first Canadian to do it.
Wow.
And it was very limited women in the rowing world that did something like that. And even the running world, like you hear about it more and more, which I'm so glad that female athletes feel like they can continue their career. Because I know all I wanted to be was an athlete when I grew up. That's what I
Hmm.
wanted to be, was an athlete. So to be able to like lengthen that time span, but yet still be able to pursue motherhood and other things, I feel like that gave me such a perspective in itself. I became a better rower and a better person. And in that final, and basically was the best version of me as an athlete in that final quadrennial. I didn't walk away with a medal, but I walked away saying, I just blasted all my PBs. Like I created all my PBs
Wow.
and I had the best race of my life. And that's pretty cool, right? Like to have that build up and and then to be a mom, which is like the combination of two beautiful things, right? Rowing and motherhood.
It's an yeah, an awesome story. I'd love to hear more. I feel like this should all like be in a book or something like that. Like all these, you've got a lot.
I
Like,
wouldn't have the patience to sit.
oh
That would
yeah,
involve sitting for long portions of time, right? Like,
yeah,
no.
that's true. That's true. Um, but yeah, no, okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Buffy, and thank you for sharing the insights of your journey and the ups and the downs and what your tactics were to overcome that. Um, for those that kind of want to follow you or reach out or whatever, where could people find you?
Yeah, I have an Instagram account, Buffy at Hydro, as well, involved with coaching with Hydro, which is a virtual rowing company. So swing on over, check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just link your bio in the description. And yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, cheers everybody for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Where's the recording stop button? Hold on, I need to find the recording end. Jesus.